Good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show, Red Pill Edition. My name is Leon Jones, and in this segment, I'm going to talk about Black Lives Matter. So the title of this video is Black Lives Matter doesn't speak for all black people. Black Lives Matter doesn't speak for all black people. Now, why am I saying this? Well, it's very clear. When it comes to Black Lives Matter, all three founders, or at least 2 out of 3 of the founders, and I'm talking about Alicia Garza, Patrice Cullors, for the most part, they are a Marxist organization. In fact, if you look at Black Lives Matter and any type of liberal movement, it starts out with a good intention, but it always turns left. Now, if you open any website of a corporation, and I've opened my fair share of websites, you're going to see banners that say, support Black Lives Matter. Talk about racial equality. Now, as a black person, I'm going to say this. When black people were marching for civil rights back in the 60s, the mistake they made was to march for integration. They should have just marched for equality, because all integration did was allow the so-called people in power to keep us on the plantation. In fact, when we had integration, black people, they were weakened. They were weakened because they felt like, well, we can be right next to Caucasian people when it comes to their businesses, but in the meantime, we don't have any businesses of our own. We could integrate into their public schools. Meanwhile, the public schools and the ghettos were starting to disintegrate. And if you look at what's going on now, they've gotten even worse. And if you look at the conditions of the African American community, it's a war zone. And I guarantee when the violence statistics comes out with the shootings in cities such as Chicago, LA, Baltimore, Philadelphia, New York, Houston, Indianapolis, and there are other cities that are on the list, you're going to find that the crime has gone up. Now, when I talked about Black Lives Matter in my last video, I asked a simple question. How come Black Lives Matter isn't there for the unborn babies? Why isn't Black Lives Matter there for black on black crime? And I'm going to keep on talking about black on black crime and abortion until I get an answer from this so-called movement. Now, what I believe this movement is, besides being a Marxist movement, it's a slogan. Black Lives Matter. They'll tell you they're for justice. They'll tell you they're for equality. But I've seen a number of videos out here with police brutality. Like I saw the one that a black woman got up in a police officer's face at a Miami airport, and the police officer slapped her. There are a number of African Americans who are trying to fight the police and are getting themselves brutalized. First of all, many people don't know what it is to be a police officer. And when Black Lives Matter comes out and tells you that they want to defund the police department, that's going to be bad news for African Americans, because there's one community in every urban area that needs police, that's the African American community. Now, again, Black Lives Matter is being supported by the DNC. In fact, this is how they get recruits. They get the most ignorant amongst us. And I've seen videos where they had protesters standing out on the interstate, getting themselves run over. Just saw Black Lives Matter or Antifa individual try to climb up a statue. What happens? He fell 10 feet. But when it comes to Black Lives Matter, they're not for all black people. And when it comes to this so-called oppression, well, you got people like LeBron James, who's making millions of dollars. Is he oppressed? You got a lot of your black athletes in the NFL and the NBA. Are they really oppressed? You got a lot of black athletes who are in just about every other sport. And I'm talking about soccer. Because even Black Lives Matter, they're talking about it globally. You had one who was mixed in racing. He's wearing a slogan, Black Lives Matter. In fact, I just came back from traveling to Indianapolis just to ride around. Went to the east side of Indianapolis. There was a gentleman selling Black Lives Matter t-shirts. Well, do any of you all know what this movement is about? Or are you just trying to fit in? If you don't know what the movement's about, you need to look on their website. Listen, black people, Black Lives Matter is not for you. They are a Marxist organization. They want to take the current system as we know it, destroy it, and they want to put in something else. In other words, they want to use the old theory I told you all about known as Cloward Pivens. If you don't know who Cloward and Pivens were, they were professors at Harvard University, and their whole objective was to get individuals to go down to every welfare office, collapse it, and bring in something different. Well, if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, Black Lives Matter isn't fighting for racism because there's no such thing as systematic racism. Systematic racism only occurs if there are policies in place, like Jim Crow. There is no Jim Crow. And as human beings, one thing I want you all to know, we are all built in with our own biases and prejudiceness. And what's happening with this Black Lives Matter movement, yeah, they'll tell you they're for police brutality, but what's happening with some of these police out there, when a police officer is encountered or challenged by a person who wants to cause harm to him, he's supposed to, or her, he's supposed to stand there and take it. And if he doesn't, then he's going to lose his job. Now, if I'm a police officer right now, here's what I would do. Go on strike. Let the savages kill each other. Because you police officers out there, your leadership doesn't care about you until they need you. And if you don't believe me, look what happened in Seattle. See, the mayor wanted to defund all the police. She allowed the chop zone to go until those same protesters came out to her house. When I was watching that incident that took place with the black women and that white couple at the Chipotle in Michigan. Now, it's funny how a number of these black women out here are indoctrinated by feminism. But when the tide is turned on them, what do? And when I'm talking about the tide, well, during that Chipotle situation, what I got from the video is that the white woman and the black woman bumped each other. Was it intentional? I don't believe it was intentional. But the black woman or the black kid was expecting an apology. Well, she didn't apologize. And the black people reached out and they were calling them racist. When they tried to pull off, they were hitting the black women, they were stomping, and they were hitting the car of the white couple that was trying to leave. White lady got out with a gun. And what happened? The black women called the police. Now, it's funny that they did that, because if those black women were in the hood and they approached somebody like me, I may have shot them. Or some other black woman would have shot them. But at the end of the day, what I'm doing is exposing that hypocrisy. That when you defund the police, you get what you get. Right now, crime is escalating, and it's going to continue to escalate. Why? Because you have individuals who thought with emotion. They did not look at the consequences of tearing down the police departments. Now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wants all the monies taken away from the police department. What I'm telling you, folks, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, they're not for black people. Black Lives Matter is for LGBTQ and hardcore feminism. And it's funny with the Black Lives Matter movement, they're out in every urban area, but it's funny, they won't come out into these small towns because they would get wiped out. They would get wiped out because individuals in the smaller towns, they're minding their own business, and they're not going to put up with bowing down to a bunch of imbeciles who don't know any better. Now, the founders of Black Lives Matter, just like any other movement, they may have started off with a good intention. However, once you took a look at the real agenda, you found out that they don't speak for you. Now, you have, of course, your race hustlers like Dr. Cornel West, Michael Eric Dyson. Then again, you got your TIs. You got all your basketball players. You got all your football players. These individuals have done pretty well here in America, but they're still claiming that they're oppressed. Now, I will tell you this about white people because I live around a number of white people. Your average white person doesn't get up every day thinking about what they're going to do to black people. And the only thing that the white people in power think about when it comes to black people is how much money they can make from black people and their vote every 4 years. Now, I'm not saying racism doesn't exist, but it is not as bad as it used to be. And a number of individuals today have never seen racism. The system may seem a little daunting to people who are not successful. Why? Because they came from a bad family environment. They came from a bad education environment. They don't read. They don't care to do anything for themselves. And see, the white liberal in the Democratic Party has taught African American people to be victims. Everything is racism. After a while, people are going to get tired of hearing the word racism. If you talk to me in a certain way, you're racist. But at the end of the day, does it give an African American person a right to talk to other people anyway? Does it give an African American person the idea that they can go and be assertive and threaten individuals with bodily harm without being called to the table? Those are the questions that aren't asked. And of course, when it comes to this black on black crime, Black Lives Matter is not there. The Al Sharptons, where's Louis Farrakhan? Again, his city of Chicago is going to have another record-setting weekend with shootings, but he's nowhere to be found. And see, I'm going to tell you black people something, and you might not like it. And listen, if you disagree with me, thumb the video down. Some of you are. But if you thumb the video down, that's going to tell me one thing. You don't disagree with what I'm saying. You don't like what I'm saying because a number of you live on a plantation. A number of you are the real coons. And you're the real coons because a number of you African Americans are ignorant. You are supporting a movement that doesn't care about you. They only care about the LGBTQ and the feminist part. One of the founders already said they want to destroy patriarchy. They want to destroy the nuclear family. Now, in the African American community, the nuclear family was destroyed a long time ago. But I don't see Black Lives Matter going out there fighting against Planned Parenthood. All I hear individuals in this movement talk about is how black people are victims. Many of us are not victims. Many of us are slaves in our right mind because we've been told to stand on the plantation. We've been told that we're ignorant. Now, we might have not been told directly that we're ignorant, but the white liberals who control the Democratic Party, they're telling us that we are ignorant and we need them. We don't need them. We don't need to vote for them. But I'm going to tell you something. Black people are going to vote for Joe Biden, particularly the African American women. And what's going to change for black people? Nothing is going to change. And you individuals who support Black Lives Matter, nothing's going to change for you either. And the reason why nothing's going to change is because many of you, again, don't want to do any research. You don't want to become part of the process. If you guys don't like police officers, why don't you join the police department? Why don't you join the military? I was in the military for 17 years. Certainly had to go through BS, but I got a lot out of the military. Why don't some of you run for politics? I mean, I know Angela Stanton, who comes from the hood, or Angela Stanton King, that's her name, who's running for Congresswoman against John Lewis in Atlanta. She's running for politics. Now, she may not win, but at least she's running for politics. But again, a number of African Americans aren't going to support her because she's not on the Democratic Party. And see, when it comes to African Americans, we have to stop allowing the white liberals to tell us how to think. We have to stop allowing liberals to tell us what we need to feel. We have to put it out there that we have our own minds, and we need to tell other black people who are on the plantation to stay on the plantation and not call us coons, not call us Uncle Sambos, or not call us bootlicking Uncle Toms, because we have our own minds. Because when it comes to what's really going on in this country, it's no systematic racism. Oppression is in our mind. Now, are some African Americans poor? Yes. Are some white people poor? Yes. Now, one thing that I tell African Americans, and even some of you whites out there, is you need to avoid, at this time, sending your children to college. College produces a lot of these Marxists who are marching. Because these professors who are teaching your children in college hate America. They don't care about the founding fathers. Certainly, what we have to do in America is this. America is a flawed country, but it's still a good country. And if Black Lives Matter really supports Marxism, communism, why don't they all go over to those Marxist countries? I've been to a few. And those people over there live in hell. Because again, you have to ask yourself, when it comes to an economy, there's capitalism, socialism, and communism. Now, capitalism, you can have ownership. There's no trickle-down economics in capitalism. It's never been like that. Business owners make money off of customers. That's what capitalism is about. Now, when you have socialism, socialism is in between capitalism and communism, but in order for socialism to work, you have to have a democratically elected government. And when you have that in control, what the democratic elected government does, they take all the resources and redistribute it equally. Now, you can own property, but you can't make too much money, because the more money you make, the more they take, because they have to, because everything has to be distributed equally. This is where you get redistribution of wealth. Again, this is where you get redistribution of wealth and resources. And when you have communism, what happens? Government controls everything. And you have a lot more corruption. And when the government controls everything, the bureaucrats at the top get everything. Now, with Black Lives Matter, who is supporting this movement? A lot of your companies, Walmart, I know Amazon is supporting it. Of course, George Soros is funding it. Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. You got a lot of other companies. And see, what these big companies don't want is competition from small companies. And you have a lot of your Democratic politicians who really don't want the economy to run, because if you look at what's going on, the main agenda is globalism. This is why you hear of the Green Deal when you hear Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez speak. Also, you have Democrats. They believe in communism. But a lot of them haven't lived under communism. You have a lot of money being made and transferred by these big companies. Look at the Rothschilds out there. I mean, Black Lives Matter and the NBA. This is why this movement isn't going to work. They want to paint Black Lives Matter on the basketball courts. Now, during the first NFL football game, they want to sing the Black National Anthem. Now, I know what the Black National Anthem is, but many of us don't sing the Black National Anthem. Now, you have some that want to take away Columbus Day and replace it with Juneteenth. Now, most of us don't even know what Juneteenth is. In fact, here in 2020 is when you heard the word Juneteenth, because they don't teach that in school, because the Democrats run your schools. The Democrats write the textbooks. And see, in this country, you can try to rewrite history, but it's already documented. Now again, with this Black Lives Matter is nothing but a bunch of recruited white kids and some black kids who join a movement because they're getting paid, number one, and number two, they listen to their college professors. They're taught that this country is bad. Well, if this country is so bad, how come a number of people are benefiting from this country? And that includes people on the left. When you have people in this country who are celebrities, And you have the media, because the media is distorting everything. When you turn on the television, and anything that Donald Trump does that's good for America, it's turned into doom and gloom. And what the Democrats are trying to do with the media is they keep pushing these images to a lot of uninformed people, a lot of ignorant people. So these uninformed and ignorant people are going to vote for them. Now, last week, Joe Biden spoke. And Joe Biden's a big racist himself. When you hang around the Grand Wizard, Senator Byrd, he's now deceased, but he was from West Virginia. That's a problem right there. You think about it. David Duke, who was a conservative, and he says a lot of the right information. But why isn't he being taken seriously? Because he was a Klan member. And what we as African Americans need to do is not support the Black Lives Matter movement. Because the Black Lives Matter movement is going to destroy all of us in the African American community. Now, we don't have to live in the hood, but we're still black. And in this country, the biggest stabilizer is innovation. We don't have any of that going on in the African American community. Again, most black people come from the urban areas, and the urban areas are run by Democrats. The Democrats don't care anything about you. They give you crumbs and they tell you to go on about your way until it's time for you to vote for them. Many of these individuals who are your mayors, your city council members, they're not looking out for your security. When it comes to defunding the police, many of them want to see you destroyed because they know African Americans can act like savages. Again, you look at what's going to go on this weekend in Chicago, in Baltimore, in Philadelphia, in LA, in Houston, in Miami. And again, for the police officers out there, if you don't want to be bothered with your leadership not supporting you, walk off the job. And let your leadership handle everything. Now, see, the leadership isn't going to care, and the celebrities aren't going to care because they can afford private security. So that leaves the people who are your average everyday folks without any security. And when there's no security, you're going to have lawlessness. And this is what Black Lives Matter, and you can include Antifa, they want lawlessness. Because these individuals have no solutions on how to run a system. They think communism is good and capitalism is bad. Now, of course, capitalism does have its problems. But here in America, you have a number of African Americans who are in high profile positions and they claim they're oppressed. I mean, I don't make six figures, but I'm not oppressed. I've got college degrees. I've been afforded the opportunity to utilize my skills to make something of myself. That's what America is about. Now, if you don't want to work hard, work smart, you don't want to understand the system, and you think communism, socialism are the best solutions for you, then go live in those countries. But I guarantee a number of you will come back. Why? Because you can't express your real thoughts. Because people who are running tyranny, they'll have you executed. Meanwhile, you need to be blessed for what you have here. Everything is not going to be equal. Again, here in America, we have to understand that history is good and bad. And you have to see the good with the bad so we don't repeat the bad. And when we go to vote, don't listen to what Black Lives Matter tells you. Start looking at the candidates for yourselves. Because as African American people, we're not oppressed. Not physically, but in our minds, we're told that we're oppressed. And you white folk, don't get on one knee, don't feel guilty. What happened, happened. You go on with it. You just understand not to repeat the same thing that happened in the past. But when it comes to everybody in this country, particularly the younger generation, it's up to you to get more knowledgeable on what's going on, because you're our future leaders. And you will never make it living in a land of tyranny. Now, many of you have been exposed to that nonsense in school. If you go to college, start challenging your professors. And brothers and sisters, black brothers and sisters, white brothers and sisters, take up arms, get into the system, but understand the system, understand what you really want. Don't think through emotion, because at the end of the day, when it comes to black people, you don't want to go to Africa. You want to be right here. Why? Because you know you benefit from being in this country. So I have a question to all my African American brothers and sisters, just like I ask in every video. Do you want freedom or do you want tyranny? The choice is yours. And that's my commentary for this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. If you like what I just presented, please comment, share, and subscribe. Also, check out my Mind of STEM channel. On that channel, I give you a daily dose of science, technology, engineering, and math. In today's video, I talked about psychology. Tonight on Blog Talk Radio, I'm going to talk about the Marxist doctrine. 215-383-5785. It's a call-in number. And if you can't find me on YouTube or Blog Talk Radio, you can find me on Facebook. Remember, be blessed for what you have. Don't worry about what you don't have. Always know that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. Thank you for listening to this edition of the 411 Talk Zone radio show right here on YouTube. Till next time, my name is Leon Jones. You have a wonderful and blessed evening. God bless you. I'm out.